Once upon a time, in a land far away. Try pasting a very long story. They tried to stop her before she ever stepped into the arena. Not because she lacked skill, not because her papers were wrong, but because the horse tied behind her old trailer did not look like he belonged. In a place built on pride, money, and polished bloodlines, one quiet paint horse was about to challenge everything they believed about worth. Jane Smith stood at the registration desk of the prestigious Newtown 3-day event, with her entry form clutched in one hand and her checkbook in the other. She looked calm on the outside, but her chest felt tight. Behind her, tied to a rusty trailer with faded paint and a dented fender, stood Muffin. He was a small paint horse with uneven brown and white patches, short, sturdy legs, and a calm way of standing that made him look half asleep in the afternoon sun. Inside the office, the air smelled like polish and paperwork. The registration coordinator, Fiona Kent, sat behind the desk wearing pearls that looked more like armor than jewelry. When she looked up from her screen, her polite smile froze. Her eyes flicked past Jane and out the window. In just a few seconds, that polite look turned into something close to shock. "I am sorry," Fiona said, though her voice carried no kindness. "Which division are you entering?" "Advanced level," Jane said, sliding the form forward. Fiona's eyebrows lifted high. "Advanced," she repeated slowly. "As in the top level of eventing?" "That's right." Fiona leaned toward the window, her eyes moving past rows of spotless trailers and tall, elegant horses with shining coats. Her gaze stopped on Muffin, her lips pressed into a thin line. "That paint horse," she said. "His name is Muffin?" "Yes." Fiona picked up the form as if it might stain her fingers. "Ms. Smith, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. The advanced division here is reserved for serious competitors, horses of a certain caliber." Jane felt her jaw tighten. "Muffin is qualified. We have completed 4 advanced events this season. Our scores are in the packet." Fiona barely glanced at the pages. "Newtown is not just any event. We have standards. Sponsors, media. Every horse here reflects the image of this competition." "And you are saying my horse does not meet those standards," Jane said. "I am saying," Fiona replied, "that this level requires horses bred for it. Warm bloods, thoroughbreds, not Western-type horses." "Muffin is not a Western pleasure horse," Jane said evenly. "He is an event horse, a good one." Fiona sighed, slow and sharp. "I am trying to save you embarrassment. Look around. These horses cost more than most homes. And then there is your horse." "My entry fees are the same as everyone else's," Jane said. "My qualifications are valid." Behind them, other riders waited. Jane could feel their attention. She did not turn, but she could imagine the looks. Her worn boots, her plain clothes, her horse that looked like he belonged at a county fair instead of one of the most respected events in the country. "I am not withdrawing," Jane said. Fiona's smile vanished. "Then I will need to call the technical delegate. There are safety concerns." 20 minutes later, a man with gray hair and an official badge walked with Jane to her trailer. His name was Richard Thornberry. He studied Muffin in silence as the horse dozed, one eye half open. "He is not what we usually see at this level," Thornberry said. "No," Jane replied. "He is not." She told him where Muffin came from, a ranch-bred horse, bought for $1,200, trained slowly, moved up one level at a time. Thornberry checked the records on his phone. His eyes narrowed. "Your scores are clean, better than many." "How did you manage that with a horse like this?" he asked. Jane felt the sting in his words. "Because he has heart." Thornberry looked at Muffin again. "You are allowed to compete," he said finally. "But this will not be easy. People will talk." Jane nodded. She already knew. That evening, as she settled Muffin into the smallest stall at the far end of the barn, the whispers followed her. People laughed quietly. Phones came out. Someone snapped pictures. The next morning, Jane arrived early and froze. A sign was taped to Muffin's stall door. It read, "Pasture ornament. Do not feed." Her hands shook as she tore it down. Muffin greeted her with a soft nicker, unaware of the insult. "You should ignore them," said a calm voice behind her. Jane turned to see an older woman with kind eyes. "I am Dr. Liz Rogers," she said. "I am one of the event vets. I looked up your record. You and your horse belong here." Jane swallowed hard. For the first time since arriving, she felt less alone. The first phase was dressage. Jane knew it would be hard. Muffin did not move like the fancy horses. But when they entered the arena, something changed. He listened. He tried. Every movement was clean and careful. When the scores went up, Jane stared at the board in disbelief. Muffin was in third place out of more than 40 horses. The laughter stopped. And that was only the beginning. The second day dawned clear and warm, the kind of morning that made the grass sparkle and the air feel sharp with promise. Jane walked the cross-country course before the sun climbed high. The land rolled wide and open, cut with hills, water, and solid wooden fences that looked carved straight out of the earth. This was the heart of the event. This was where horses showed who they really were. Jane studied every jump carefully. She counted strides, traced lines with her eyes, and imagined Muffin's feet landing strong and sure. The course was long and demanding. Many riders whispered that it was the hardest Newtown had built in years. Jane did not feel fear. She felt focus. Muffin had done harder work back home on rough ground with no crowds watching. By midday, the barns buzzed with tension. Horses snorted. Riders paced. Jane brushed Muffin slowly, her hands steady. He stood relaxed, his head low, chewing hay like it was any other day. He did not know he was an underdog. He only knew his rider was near. As Jane led him toward the start area, people stared openly now. Some pointed, some shook their heads. Others leaned forward with interest. The paint horse from yesterday had become the talk of the grounds. Fiona stood near the rope line with a tight smile. "It is not too late to withdraw," she said. "Cross-country is dangerous." Jane met her eyes. "We are ready." The starter called Jane's number. The countdown echoed in her ears. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They burst forward. Muffin surged beneath her, his stride quick and powerful. He did not float like the tall horses. He drove forward with purpose, each step eating ground. The first fence came fast. A solid table jump. Muffin lifted and cleared it clean, landing steady and straight. Jane heard a murmur ripple through the crowd. Fence after fence came and went. Brush jumps, corners, combinations that required trust. Muffin never hesitated. His ears stayed forward. His body stayed honest. He met every question with confidence. At the water complex, the crowd thickened. Horses before them had stumbled here. Some had refused. Jane steadied Muffin and sent him on. He jumped into the water without pause, splashed through and leapt out clean as if he had done it 100 times before. The crowd roared. Jane felt something rise in her chest, not pride, belief. They climbed the long hill toward the final fences. Muffin's breathing was strong. His stride did not fade. When they crossed the finish flags, Jane pulled him down gently, her heart pounding. She laughed out loud, unable to stop herself. They had gone clear, not just clear, fast. Dr. Rogers met them with a wide smile. "That," she said, checking Muffin's pulse, "was one of the best rounds I have seen all day." When the updated scores were posted, Jane's knees went weak. Muffin stood in first place. First, ahead of horses worth more money than she would see in her lifetime. That evening, the mood shifted. Jane was cooling Muffin when Fiona appeared with 2 officials. Their faces were stiff and careful. "There have been concerns," Fiona said. "Questions about your horse's performance." Jane felt the words before she understood them. What kind of questions? "Some competitors believe his performance may have been enhanced," another official said. "We need to conduct additional testing." Jane's breath caught. "You think I drugged my horse?" "We are not accusing," Fiona said quickly. "But testing is required." Jane nodded once. "Test him." The blood draw was done under bright lights. Muffin stood quietly, trusting. Jane sat in her trailer that night, unable to sleep. Every sound made her jump. She thought of whispers, of money, of people who did not want to be beaten by a horse like hers. At dawn, Dr. Rogers knocked softly. "He is clean," she said, completely. Jane closed her eyes, relief washing through her. "But you should know," Dr. Rogers added, "the pressure is not stopping. Some riders are angry. They say your horse does not belong." Jane looked toward Muffin's stall. He stood with one hip cocked, calm as ever. "He belongs," she said. "He earned this." The final day came with heavy clouds and a packed arena. Show jumping would decide everything. Rails fell all morning as tired horses made mistakes. Jane watched quietly. She did not count faults. She watched Muffin. They would go last. As Jane tacked up, a tall man approached her. Christopher Wells, the rider in second place. "I just wanted to say," he said, "no matter what happens, you and your horse have changed something here." Jane nodded, grateful. The crowd was loud when they entered the arena. Muffin's ears flicked, but he stayed with her. The bell rang. Fence 1 fell behind them, clear. Fence 2, clear. The triple combination came and went, clear. Jane felt Muffin begin to tire near the end, but he never quit. At the final fence, the widest jump on course, she felt him gather every ounce of strength he had left. He jumped. The rails stayed up. The arena exploded. Jane rode through the finish and slid from the saddle, burying her face in Muffin's mane. She was shaking, laughing, crying. They had done it. But as cheers filled the air, Jane noticed Fiona standing still at the edge of the ring, watching. Her face was unreadable. The results were being tallied, and Jane knew that even now the fight might not be over. The arena slowly emptied as officials gathered near the scoreboard. Jane stood beside Muffin, her hand resting on his neck. His coat was dark with sweat, his breathing finally slowing. He leaned into her touch like he always did, steady and trusting. Whatever happened next, he had given her everything. The announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. The final results would be posted in minutes. Jane felt the weight of the crowd pressing in again. Cameras pointed her way. People whispered, not laughing now, but watching with tight faces. Fiona stood near the officials' table, speaking in low tones. Jane could see the tension in her posture. There were papers in Fiona's hands. For a brief moment, Jane wondered if they would find a way to take it all away. Then Dr. Rogers appeared at Jane's side. "No matter what they say," she whispered, "you did something real here. They cannot erase that." The scoreboard flickered as the numbers updated. First place, Jane Smith and Muffin. For a second, the world seemed to stop. Then the crowd erupted. Cheers rolled across the arena like thunder. People stood, hats lifted into the air. Jane felt her knees give as the truth finally settled in. They had won. The paint horse no one wanted had beaten the best in the country. Jane hugged Muffin's neck, tears soaking into his mane. He snorted softly, more interested in the promise of water and rest than trophies or applause. To him, it was just another good day of work. The victory lap felt unreal. Jane rode Muffin around the arena as the crowd clapped and shouted his name. She saw faces that had mocked her now staring in disbelief. She saw young riders pressed against the rail, eyes wide with hope. On the podium, Jane accepted the ribbon and trophy with shaking hands. When the announcer spoke Muffin's name, the cheers grew even louder. Jane looked out and saw Fiona standing at the back, silent and still. Later that evening, after the crowds thinned and the noise faded, Jane found a folded letter waiting on the step of her trailer. It was written neatly, carefully. It was from Fiona. In the letter, Fiona admitted she had judged Muffin by his looks. She admitted she had forgotten what the sport was meant to be about. Partnership. Courage. Try. She apologized, not just to Jane, but to the horse she had dismissed. She ended by wishing them luck and thanking them for reminding her why horses mattered in the first place. Jane folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. She walked to Muffin's stall and scratched his favorite spot behind the ear. "You changed some minds," she said softly. News of Muffin's win spread fast. Photos of the paint horse filled magazines and newspapers. People who had never watched a 3-day event before were suddenly talking about one small horse with a big heart. Messages poured in from riders who had been told their horses were not good enough. But the best moment came weeks later at a quiet local event. A young girl approached Jane, leading a small, uneven pony. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I was going to quit," she said. "They said my pony could never do anything big, but then I saw Muffin." Jane knelt down and smiled. "Never let anyone tell you what your horse can or cannot be," she said. Muffin retired a few years later, sound and happy. He spent his days grazing and napping in the sun, just as calm as he had always been. Jane went on to train other overlooked horses, always searching for heart instead of looks. People still talked about the Newtown event. About the year, a paint horse walked in where he did not belong and walked out a champion. And every time Jane thought about that first day at the registration desk, about the whispers and the laughter, she smiled. Because Muffin had never cared what he looked like. He had only cared about trying. And in the end, that was enough.